Hey everybody, welcome back to the Jeep Journals, where today I'm just kind of freestyling. It is Sunday and it's still hot outside. I think tomorrow we're supposed to get a cool front where our temperatures drop down into the mid 90s and we finally have a chance for some desperately needed precipitation. We are in dire need of rain. We're in so much need of rain that even the Hawks and Ravens, and actually I meant Falcons, even the Hawks and Falcons are waiting outside for water at the watering stations. The Ravens, I'm sure that they're following the rivers and doing whatever Ravens do, although I do see them pass over on occasion. Anyway, the birds that come to our water stations include hawks and falcons. Jays, woodpeckers, doves, goldfinches, all kinds of different things show up. We even have martins that are trying to take over the martin house that I've got in the yard. But the sparrows are not wanting to give up their property yet. So that's kind of how it is in the world. I think there are a lot of people who are not willing to give up the property that they've got such a hold on, although they may not be maintaining it the same way that the new stewards would. That's another story for another day. For today's story, what I'd like to talk about is communication, where I feel that many of us are having troubles communicating, even those who are using a lot of words, like myself. I'm using a lot of words to communicate. I'm trying to convey the emotions that I'm having. Like, for an example, if I mention that I've gone through some challenging times with one or more of my parents, and if I tell you that these challenging times are related to communication difficulties, and if I tell you that I'm also being called away to another state in order to maintain properties that are not my own and infrastructures that are not my own, and that I'm going to have less and less time to talk with some of the people who I could literally talk with right now because they're in my neck of the woods, but that for whatever reason, we've been prevented from getting together. If I told you that enough to where I said that these individuals were always invited into this location, and that in some cases, some of my relatives might see, for an example, the picture that's over my head right there, and they might excuse themselves out of a conversation because of the imagery that is around me. They might freak out at some of the stuff that's being shown, and they might judge, even though none of us are really a judge. We're just really children of our mutual creator moving through this earth experience in this human form together as stewards of whatever it is that we've been entrusted to. So we're either caring about the things that we're entrusted to, which includes our family members and our friends, or we're not really doing that great of a job. So today I added 2 additional water features, 3 really. I repaired one that had been broken, which I mentioned in a recent video. I mentioned that one of the watering feeders had been broken, probably by the raccoons. I'm not really sure. Without having a motion activated camera on that station, I can't say for a fact it was raccoons, but something heavy pulled the watering station down. And so I repaired that using some chemical-based adhesive that you would find in a big box store. And so as a matter of communication, I'm telling you that I am still a consumer at the big box stores, just like anyone else. And in fact, we've had some situations where we needed to resort to some chemical-based alternatives to kind of slow the progress of certain things like wasps. As stewards of our own environments, we're tasked with fixing all of these things that happen to go wrong around us, and maintaining all that seems to go right around us. And in many of these cases, the options that we have are things that were brought to us by our fathers. And I don't say that in a light way or a joking way. This is just the way it is. I mean, the different applications that we can find at the big box stores are things that were for sale during the previous generation when my parents weren't even thinking about being parents. These are things that were at the stores already. Today, we watched a movie called Deep in the Heart, and it's a wildlife video, and it's based out of Texas. It's showcasing a lot of the wildlife here in Texas, and it starts out telling a story with a rattlesnake at the beginning, and it transitions to ocelots, black bears, mountain lions. It even touches on how the fact that jaguars were once roaming this beautiful Lone Star State. There were many creatures that used to be in this mix. The diversity used to be so abundant that I can't even say for a fact that all of it had been recorded. I bet you there are so many animals that were here that we never have known about because they were never documented. But whatever the case, I just wanted to mention that here in Texas, in the city that I'm in, we have the option to watch a film called Deep in the Heart. And Deep in the Heart is something that it theoretically would support the entities that helped bring that entertainment to our big screen. And in so doing, we went and consumed some of the options that were there, a drink, some snacks, and whatnot. And as we walked out, all I could think was, there's so much ease with which we can get all of our snacks. And all I could think was I needed to add another watering station for the birds because they're extremely thirsty. And they're so thirsty that, again, I see hawks and falcons regularly in my own yard. They're basically hanging out, waiting for the watering stations to get refilled, which I think is unusual. But so is this weather where we're finally going to get a cool front where it dips down into the mid-90s as a cool front. It's going to dip down into the mid-90s, and we finally have the chance of rain where it's been weeks upon weeks of 100-degree plus weather. In some cases, it was just under 100, but for weeks and weeks, it's been at or over 100 degrees here in San Antonio. In the past, these temperatures would normally present themselves in July and August. Here it is in June. We already hit the hundreds in May, and all of this is uncommon. It's so uncommon that even the abundance of tomatoes that I used to be able to pick right here in this very garden has been such that it's all been pilfered. Not pilfered, but it's all been eaten by the animals that are visiting this yard because they're thirsty. So if we're thirsty or hungry for something, what do? In many cases, we can just pick up, go to a place, and at an affordable price, choose from a variety of options that will satisfy our basic cravings. And even if it doesn't, we can choose something else and continue to choose and continue to choose. So today, what I wanted to do is talk about choosing to communicate. Because man does not live on bread alone. We also live on communication, sharing of knowledge, sharing of the good word. But many of the people out there who claim to be supporters of the good word will not communicate fully. They'll just discontinue their communications. And some people think that this would hurt me, for an example, that it would hurt me to not communicate with me, to not respond to the questions that I've asked. One time I talked with someone who apparently says that if he ever gets pulled over, and he's actually done this, he tells the officer, "I don't answer questions." And apparently that's a valid response, but I think that it would make the officer pretty agitated. And the mission of one another, of ourselves, is not necessarily to agitate one another. So it's kind of a fine line. When I talk about communication and when I try to raise questions that I believe have not been answered, it probably seems like I am agitating someone. But from my perspective, it almost seems like I'm talking to people who choose to say, I don't answer questions. So when I talk with people who don't answer questions, it's a little bit entertaining. It's not agitating to me. It's a little bit entertaining because in some ways it's just easy to see that when you don't answer a question, probably 99.9% of the time, you're just lying. And you're normally lying to yourself, especially if the other person knows that you're misrepresenting the truth. These are just observations. They're not for sure bits of data, but one thing is for sure, I have not talked with my own father since his birthday early this year. Last year, he burned down his house and then he was about to set fire to himself. And while he was in a rehab location, the rehab location called me, even after having discussed with me that they shouldn't talk with anyone else because of the nefarious things that were going on. The rehab location called me, one of the caseworkers, and asked me, do you know where your father is? Well, honestly, I didn't know. I didn't even know that he had relocated, and neither did they apparently. So it turns out that his sisters helped him to move into an apartment, furnished his apartment, kept his information from me for over a month, while they got him to sign over paperwork deeding the property to my older former mayor cousin, former mayor of a small town. Many of you can backtrack and you know exactly which small town this person was the mayor of. None of that really matters. The only reason that I mention that detail is because some people in positions of power are sometimes able to use their insight to manipulate a system, usually against people who they really do not like. I guess they don't like me, or my father for that matter. But I do. I like them. I like my father. I pray for everybody, including the people that some might consider as enemies. I think that we all could probably stand to use a little bit more joy in our lives. Things that bring me joy are wildlife. The things that bring me joy sometimes are imagery that some people don't like. But that doesn't mean they don't have to like me. So in the same way that the things that get you excited may not excite me the same way, I still praise all of your accomplishments, all of your joys. Because the more you smile, the more you probably would not mind, answering a question. So, not long ago, I posted something saying, is there anything that you like about me? And also, we need to communicate. We need to work better to communicate. Something like that. So if you can do me the honor of clicking on the comments and actually responding with something that's insightful, or better yet, if you're someone who happens to fall in a circle of segment of people who used to talk with me in person or over any kind of a communications medium, feel free to reach out. And the only thing that I ask is that you communicate fully in multiple directions, not just to the point where you're finding out how I'm doing. If you want to find out how I'm doing, check out all of these videos. If you want to have a discussion about what's really going on and to learn with your peers, well, hopefully I'm included in that group. If not, it really doesn't matter. I feel like I'm somehow light years beyond most of the influencers. Let's just keep it that way. And in terms of what I consider an influencer, what I mean is we have educators, we have parents, we have grandparents, we have all kinds of different people who are influencers. Whether you're on this particular platform or whatever, we have influencers. We also have things that we can be under the influence of. So we've got to be very mindful of what we're paying attention to, spending our time on, because anytime we spend and pay for something, we're really paying attention. When people pay, they pay attention. If we're only paying for things at a discount and getting the full satisfaction, or thinking that we do, but we have to keep going back for more and more over and over, it could be that we're paying for our basic addictions. It could be that we're overlooking the limited opportunities that we have with the scarce encounters that we have between each other. And the beauty that I recognize in one another is the same way that I'm able to fall in love over and over with each of the people who I communicate with. Sometimes there are difficulties communicating. That's okay. I am able to overcome those obstacles. And sometimes there's just people that don't answer questions. Those type of people a lot of times will not pray for you. They'll actually pray for your failure. And so that's the part where I talk about watching out for being cursed and for people that talk behind your back in different ways to put you down. There are observations that are true, and then there are dishonest deeds where we are sometimes putting one another down. And to know the difference, usually when someone does something, if they feel really bad afterwards, or if they can't sleep well, then perhaps they're doing something in an incorrect way. It's possible. It's just a theory. I'm not really sure. I couldn't tell you for certain. All I can tell you is that the birds are very thirsty and hungry. And so we've done our best to try and water and feed all that's around us. And we do that on a regular basis. I hope that you're doing the same thing. If you notice that wildlife is struggling in your location, I hope that you're tuning in to movies like Deep in the Heart. I forget what the former video was called. It was like The Border and the Wall, something like that, made by Fins and Fur Productions, or at least collaborated by that business, by that movie entity. Whatever the case, it's extremely valuable information to watch and to enjoy. And Matthew McConaughey narrates, so you get to hear someone who's talking with a Texas drawl about the farmland and the mountain lions and the ocelots, and I can't really talk as sexy as he can, but I can talk in a way where you understand and can visualize that the rattlesnake is one of the whatever, I can make up all kinds of things and try to entertain you. But again, I'm not an entertainer. I'm just the messenger. Don't shoot the messenger if you can avoid it. If you want to shoot me some money by clicking on the description link and helping to feed and water the birds and wildlife that are coming to this yard that I'm steward of. Because for some reason, there are so many communication difficulties going on that even the money that I make is causing me additional circumstances that, just as an example, I bet most of you have gotten your income tax refunds already. For some reason, mine's going to be delayed another 6 to 8 weeks. And that's fine. I can be patient. The thing is that there are things that need to be fed and hydrated right now. And so in order to help, it sure does help to have the resources available to accomplish those things. Anyway, these are just basic thoughts on this basic Sunday where I'm talking about basic communication skills. So I hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, peace, love, and all that old school stuff.